It's funny. People always be like, don't forget about the little people. It's like, why do they refer themselves as little anyway, you know? Why don't you just get big with me? Feel me? They can see it in my eyes.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of John's Untitled Podcast, a partner of MoshPitNation.com. This week's guests, yes, there are two of them, is Daniel Terry from Discography Discussion, and the guest that we talked to today was Adam Morgan. Dan actually is joining me for this intro, something I've never actually done. So, Dan, thanks again for coming on and doing this chat with me.
Yeah, no problem, man. It's good to be here. I'm super pumped.
I feel like I owed you guys one for tanking the episode I was on.
Oh, well, you know what, man? It happens. You know, we cut all your shit out. It's fine.
If anyone ever wanted like an AA meeting, like where it's like an intervention, just record yourself get sloppy drunk, and then it's like, oh fuck, people let me do that? Like, what happened?
We do it every week, man.
I guess. So kind of tell me a little bit about how you got into to Hopesfall, because I know like when I had mentioned I was going to have Adam on and I reached out, you were pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I was pretty jazzed up about it. I got into Hopesfall years ago, probably like 16, 17 years ago. And I picked up their very first record, not when it came out. I was a few years late on that, but I picked up. I quickly got myself up to date and have been a fan of the band ever since. And I got two more records from them after that initial finding, and I really loved what I heard on those. And I've been a diehard fan ever since. So I'm definitely really excited to be talking to Adam tonight and kind of getting his perspective on some of those records and seeing if some of the things that I felt about those records line up with what he felt about them.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I was listening to the conversation you guys had about Hopesfall today, and it was 2017 when you guys recorded it, and the news that the band was reuniting was happening, but you guys were waiting for an album announcement, and here we are probably about a year later, and you're getting to kind of talk about the things that you did on your podcast and kind of get some of the answers, your questions answered. And it's always interesting, like when I look back on some of the people I've had on that I've been a lifelong fan of and get to ask these questions, it's always kind of like, holy shit, you mean I get to do this? Like, what the fuck is my life?
Yeah, for sure. Like it's yeah. It's hard to put into words because like when we started doing our podcast, it was like really, we never thought we'd be talking to anybody or getting those perspectives. We were just like, oh, I like this record. I don't like this one because of this. And then I like this one because of this. And, it's definitely developed over time, being kind of more of an introspective thing, which, like when you start a podcast, you don't necessarily want to just talk about you. But
right.
It kind of becomes that way over time, and especially with some of these chats, you really kind of gets into the psyche of some of your favorite podcast hosts. You kind of figure out where they're coming from, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun, man. It's been kind of unreal,
Yeah, I'm hoping. I'm kind of looking forward to doing this chat. Like, I've never had a guest host on. I've never had a co-host on. So you're breaking my virginal territory here on the podcast.
That's what I do best.
Well, I think we should get right into our conversation with Adam Morgan of Hopesfall because it is a long one. So
yeah, let's do it.
All right, awesome. So I have the pleasure this evening of talking to not one guest, but two. I have Daniel Terry of the Discography Discussion joining me today as a co-host to talk with Adam Morgan of Hopesfall. How are you gentlemen doing this evening?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm doing good, man. Glad to be here.
Thank you both for actually coming. It was a pretty short notice, but we got it all to align, and I'm very thankful to have you both on. Dan, just real quickly, for those who may not know, kind of give a little bit of background about your introduction to the band and kind of where your fandom lies over the years.
Okay, well, I started with Hopesfall back in, I guess it was probably around 2001, 2002. So, I mean, I came a little bit late to the party, but I actually picked up their first record, The Frailty Words, just randomly, actually, from it was a CD store, and it was in the Hodgepodge section. So I only paid like $1 for that record. And I was pretty blown away whenever I put it in, and really liked, because I was really into hardcore at the time. And so, I mean, that record obviously spoke to me on that level, and it was really cool. The band had a lot of melody to them, and I had literally no complaints. And even in 2018, I really have no complaints. So I've definitely been a big Hopesfall guy for years now, and definitely one of my favorite bands. And I'm happy to be doing this interview, man. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and kind of for a little bit of a juxtaposition against that, I didn't come into the band really until I had found out about this band from the same area down in North Carolina, Harvard. And Harvard got elected to, or asked to join Hopesfall on their reunion show. So as a result of knowing the opening band, I kind of got into the band after the fact and went backwards. So I think this is going to be kind of fun to talk with Adam and kind of get a very interesting dialogue going between a longtime fan and a new fan who's kind of started at a very later point going back, and what we're both looking forward to from the band going forward with their new record coming out soon, Arbiter. So let's start. Adam, what got you into playing drums in the first place?
Let's see. I guess in 2 words, Phil Collins.
Yes.
An uncle of mine.
Phil Collins, your uncle?
Back. Yeah, I wish, man, that'd be badass. No, I had an uncle, or still have him, but back when I was probably in, maybe like 5th or 6th grade, maybe. I don't know. He came over for a family gathering for like Christmas or something when the family all gets together, and he brought over this Phil Collins CD, a Serious Hits Live, and he was playing it, and I always thought he was my favorite uncle. He was, just always really cool to me and my brother, and he was fun to play with, and he drove a really cool car, and so like I automatically just kind of looked up to him, and if he thought something was cool, then I thought it was cool, and he was jamming this Serious Hits Live cassette. Or CD, sorry. And I just picked up on it, and as soon as they left, as soon as the family left and the holidays were over, I asked my mom if we could go to the CD store so I could buy that CD. And then I just sat there and air drummed to it in my bedroom for the longest time. And but then as I got older, and, my musical preferences started changing, I always still gravitated to listening to what the drummer was doing. And that always just kind of made more sense to me than all the possibilities of where you could put your fingers on a guitar. And it was just, that just kind of boggled my mind. So I just stuck with drums, and that's just kind of how that got started.
It's kind of interesting in you talking about Phil Collins. I always have felt like he's such an underrated drummer, and he's such a drummer who plays for the song, not for the part per se, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like a Ringo or something.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that you definitely took that out of learning so much from his discography and what he's done as a solo artist and as a band person?
Maybe subconsciously. That's a good question, but honestly, it's probably just for my lack of chops that someone might listen to what I play and say, perhaps maybe he's playing for the song and not, just kind of showing off. Well, I can't show off because I'm not that good. So whatever you hear me play is just like me trying to do the best I can and also serve the music as well. But I can't, if we were one of those bands and the singer announced, drum solo, it would be the most terrible thing you've ever heard. So, yeah.
what kind of got you into, wanting to start a band, and what was the earlier versions of your first couple bands? What did they sound like?
Well, all my friends were always older than I was, by a couple years. So they were always kind of ahead, and I was just the younger kid, always kind of trying to keep up with them and what was cool musically. And, some of those older guys started playing guitar, and I kind of played drums. So, I just asked them if I could jam with them, and that's how that kind of started happening. And then our first band that I was in was, I guess, for lack of a better word, we wanted to call ourselves emo, and I guess it kind of sounded emo, but it was a 3-piece, and it was me on drums, and it was Chris Kincaid on guitar, who was the first bass player for Hopesfall on the first record. So it was me and him and our friend named Sarah Snyder played bass, and we were a 3-piece, and I was probably 15 at the time.
Okay.
And Chris had to have been 19 or maybe even 20 at that point. But, he just constantly wrote songs, and he'd bring them to practice, and we just jam on them. And then eventually that kind of lost steam, and some of our other friends, we all ran in a big pack, and everybody, when one guy picked up guitar, the other guy did. And so then that emo band just kind of shifted members, and we shifted direction, and then that became Hopesfall. Just a couple years later, I recorded the first Hopesfall album. I think it was in '98, and I was 17.
Holy shit.
So yeah, that's how far that goes back.
I think I had just moved here to Michigan from Delaware at that point.
I heard you talking to James Hart about how you used to live on the East Coast, and then you moved over to the West Coast. So how long have you been in the West Coast or the Midwest now?
I moved here in in between of school year of 95, 96. So I moved here when I was 12, and I'm 30. I'm going to be 34 in a couple months. So I've been here here in Michigan longer than I ever was back in Delaware. But it's kind of it's kind of interesting too, because I don't know if anyone else has kind of lived in different areas, but growing up out east and kind of having memories of that, and then even now living here in the Midwest, it's very interesting to kind of see the differences between, dialect, the way people live, and so on and so forth. And I've always thought that, people in touring bands like such as yourself probably get to see an interesting cross-section of people, given the fact that you're in a completely different area all the time, and just how interesting that must be when so many people were like, oh, these people are like this. And it's like, how do you know? You've never even left this fucking state.
Right. That's what you're saying. But man, yeah, that was a long time ago that we've been touring. So nothing really sticks out about how people are different to me. Really, the biggest kind of mind blown moment was the first time we went over to the West Coast, and it was just, I don't know how to describe the way the people were or just how the environment was, but it was just so different to know that you're on the complete opposite side of the U.S., and that was just awesome.
Yeah, the home thing's kind of hard for me because I was born in North Carolina, but lived my entire life here in St. Louis. So it's like, how do you really, reconcile that? Everybody's like, oh, so you know a lot about the East Coast. I was like, no, not really. I'm definitely more of a Midwest guy. I've always been. And so to find out about, stuff like the emo stuff that you were talking about, Adam, is, so like when you were back playing emo, that was the good emo, right? Like that was, that was the stuff that, that I would consider to be, some of the more influential stuff. And what year would you place that in? Pre Hopesfall, was that like what, 96, 97, sometime around there?
Yeah. Yep, exactly, like 96 probably.
Very cool.
So that's when all the stuff on Crank Records was coming out, and the emo scene, the Midwest emo scene was incredible. And man, if I could have lived in Kansas City in the mid to late 90s, that would have been incredible, you know, with bands like the Get Up Kids and, man, I'm drawing a book, Coalesce. I mean, I know they're not emo, but Shiner came from back there. They're not emo. Kansas City had a crazy scene back then.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I was in Kansas City about a year ago, and they're starting to build up again. You know, it's more like hardcore bands. But I went to a show there. It was actually at a house. Like, how old school is that? Like in 2017, I was at a house show, and you know, they had all these kind of emerging like emo hardcore bands and stuff, and it definitely seemed like a relic of the past. But I wasn't complaining one bit, you know. And
no, that's awesome.
Yeah, it seems like they're kind of building up, you know, kind of a scene there, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, no, it's really interesting that, you know, like you say that, you know, when you were in an emo band prior to Hopesfall, and later on, you know, kind of what you were doing kind of ended up becoming Hopesfall, because I definitely always got a huge vibe, especially from Frailty of Words, you know, that idea of like, yes, we're a hardcore band, but, you know, we're not afraid to be melodic. We're not afraid to be vulnerable, you know, and that was one of the things that really attracted me to the band originally. And I guess my question to you is, you know, was that a conscious choice? Were you like, you know, we're gonna take, you know, kind of this more melodic thing to the hardcore kids?
Absolutely, yeah. No, that was absolutely. We were all so into those emo bands at the time that we were writing Frailty of Words, and we had also just, I mean, not too far prior to writing that is when we stumbled into hardcore. So it was like these two genres that were just new and exciting, and we loved both aspects of, and it just kind of came naturally. We didn't sit around and talk about, well, let's do a 50% hardcore, you know, part, and then 50% emo. It's just, I mean, the guys, the guitar players grew up just worshiping the Smashing Pumpkins and Hum. And then, you know, those were kind of the radio bands of the time. And then that's kind of when there was this explosion of this underground emo and hardcore world that was brought to our eyes. And so it was like a strong foundation of Smashing Pumpkins, Hum, Pearl Jam, but then it was finding bands like Mineral and the Casket Lottery and Promise Ring, but also hearing bands like Snapcase and Earth Crisis and Strong Arm and all these other just exciting bands coming, that we're just discovering new stuff every day. And it all just kind of blended right into what we wanted to play, what just started coming out of us. And it was a complete testament to what we were listening to back then. But it wasn't a conscious decision. It was just, this makes sense to us. And that's how it came out.
Out of curiosity, when you guys are creating something that's not the norm, even probably on your local scene, what was the reaction to your music early on?
That's a good question. I'm trying to go back that far. I mean, people seem, the kids around here in Charlotte really welcomed us. And I mean, our shows, it seems right off the bat, were always, you know, really well perceived. And it seemed like the shows got bigger and bigger each time. And we also had a ton of great bands back then around Charlotte and Raleigh and around the North Carolina hardcore scene. And it really was, I mean, it was a great scene, and it felt like family. And any show you were going to play, you knew everyone was going to be there, and it was great. And, you know, people were screaming their hearts out and enjoying themselves. And I thought looking back, I think everybody really appreciated what we were doing.
Interesting. I always just kind of like to go back when I can and find out, there's a lot like on Dan's discography discussion that they did on your guys' discography. That was kind of redundant, but they were making, a comment about how a lot of bands ripped you off and got further along in their careers than potentially you guys really ever did. And so it's always kind of interesting to look back on something and be like, this band had this thing, but maybe came a little too early or something like that. And so I always kind of wondered, what's it like from the person's perspective that went through it? Did you realize you were making something that was so unique, and what was it like, when people were coming to shows? Like, because I could kind of see people just kind of standing there with their arms crossed, kind of going like, what the fuck is this? It's not the hardcore I'm used to. It's not rock because it's heavier than that, but it's not hardcore that I'm used to because you don't have a lot of very different subgenres like you do now, because that's a played out thing. So, I kind of want to go back and maybe just kind of look at that a little bit and see what that was like. Cause I kind of agree with them. Like, and going back and listening through the discography, there's a lot of things that you guys were doing as the collective that were fresh and new at the time, but became kind of identifiers that other bands would kind of take and run with. And when they brought that up, I was just kind of like, yeah, that's kind of true. And like I said, what was it just kind of like for you to experience that? And even if, like if it was kind of like a motherfucker, like we did this thing and people are taking it from us and they're getting our success. Like, was there ever that kind of a moment either?
Personally for me, I never really thought much about it. And it's still kind of flattering to hear that, even if I believe it or not. But I don't know. I can't dwell on that. I mean, if people say that we helped create a certain sound that other bands got popular and successful on, then all I can take that as is just flattering, and that's great. Good for them. And maybe we just started that train a little too early and kind of drove by everyone, and then everybody else jumped on and got the success. I don't know, but I don't think about it too much.
Oh, sorry. The thing for me was that at the time I was in. We're not going to dwell on this too much on the podcast, but. One of the things that attracted me to the band, originally was I was a Christian hardcore kid from the beginning. Like during that time period, like some of the bands you mentioned, like Strong Arm, and like Focused and bands like that. Hopesfall was really kind of a breath of fresh air whenever they came out, because it was one of those like I was really into that whole like Christian scene, but like. It was a little bit too insane, like a little bit too like, even back then I kind of felt like, some of the bands were a little bit too tough guy and a little bit too like in your face about stuff that not everybody at the show was on board with. And I think that, I really enjoyed it at the time, but, later in life, I kind of appreciated what you guys threw down on the frailty of words, and that you had a record that had, kind of a positive spin to it. And had, kind of faith-based lyrics. And I mean, Doug's delivery on those records was just so passionate and so, so in the pocket for what people liked from hardcore. Because for me, hardcore is all about the passion. And so, like Hopesfall had that in spades, especially on that record, The Frailty of Words. And I remember just kind of really being taken aback that like, wow, we have a band that actually kind of gets it, as far as like, they're not alienating, but they're trying to just kind of, expose us emotionally, but also give us kind of that positive spin. And so I think, in the early days, I would have described Hopesfall as kind of like a Christian hardcore band. I know that's not really the case now, like as far as like a band can be no more Christian than a glass of water,
Right.
But, it'd be one of those things where, back at that time, whenever I was like really, into the scene and all that, And I think, kind of part of John's question too was that, what was it like kind of dealing with that, in the beginning of, yes, we have faith-based lyrics, but then at the same time, you've got these people attaching things to it that aren't necessarily things that you had attached to it yourselves, like people reading too much into it and making your music into maybe something that it was not. Is that something that you guys experienced back in the Frailty of Words era?
Maybe a little bit. Back in the Frailty of Words era, we were all still going to church together on like Wednesday nights and stuff like that. So we were still very, I think if my memory serves me right. But yeah, we were still very much, in that, especially me, that Christian youth group kind of scene. And we were a tight knit crew of us. There's about 20 of us that were, always hanging out together. So we were always, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. We were kind of in our own bubble at that time because we were so young. Most of us didn't understand how the outside world worked. So this was, being in the Christian youth group and being in that bubble of friends that all think and believe the same way was just completely normal to us. And it really didn't dawn on us that they were, I don't know, man, you have to edit this because I'm trying to process this question and the memories that I'm having. It was just, man, I'm sorry, Dan.
You're good.
No, it's okay. It's a loaded question. It's something that I like to bring up a lot.
Yeah. We played shows. Well, no, that's not the question you were asking. People never really made it more than what it was as far as lyrical content or anything like that, because that's who we were. In the early days, Doug would, if he felt like it, he would start, I don't want to say preaching, but he would go on a little, rant that was kind of not too in your face, but just kind of like, and not an altar call either, but
inspired.
If he felt led to say, if he felt inspired, exactly. Thank you, Dan. If he felt inspired, then he would say something. And that, a lot of people can either, if you're in the Christian scene and you're in the Christian hardcore scene back then, that's what you wanted. Like, you wanted the singer to get up there and start, preaching. But if you were a kid that didn't want to have anything to do with that, that was a good chance for you to turn your back on that band. But,
it's a good time to go.
We always had, yeah, exactly. So we always had I always felt like we were still respected by the non-Christian bands that we were playing with and the non-believers that were, there for the show. Every once in a while there'd be some good humored, kind of poking at us, but we never really, took it to heart or anything like that. But I'm sorry,
that's
probably
refreshing.
got way away from your question, but
no, that's refreshing to hear though. Cause on my podcast, I've talked to the guys from Zayo, a few other Christian bands, and, they had kind of more of a negative experience. So I always kind of try to gauge, what it was like, for bands that started off in that scene, and, I think for some bands, it's a really good launching point, because, if you're a Christian hardcore band back in the late 90s, that was during a time where you had records like Blood and Fire by Zayo, Embrace the Eternal by Embodiment, Living Sacrifices Reborn was really big at that time. And I guess as big as a Christian metalcore band could be in the early 2000s, like 1999, 2000, that cusp, and so no, that's really refreshing to hear, though, that you guys kind of didn't have to deal with a lot of the shit that other bands, had to deal with at that time. And I think part of that might have just been because you guys weren't, you guys weren't, on the West Coast and, dealing with that, like, just that crazy hardcore movement that took place then. And I think the emo element kind of helped you guys too, in the sense that people were looking for something that was a little bit more than the standard hardcore, and I think you guys definitely delivered in that.
Right. Yeah. We never really had a hard go at it for being a Christian band in my memory. I mean, everything just always kind of seemed to be a mutual respect. And I mean, I don't have any good stories about people walking out on us because of anything, or, anything faith-based. And it was just an all-encompassing scene back then for us. I mean, I know other bands went through it, but I mean, honestly, looking back, there was no real drama when it came to that issue. Maybe it was just the music and our passion for what we were doing. Maybe it just kind of transcended whatever you're hung up on, and you just were there to enjoy the music how it should be. And it went really smoothly.
Well, and that's really cool because, I mean, and obviously that is truthful in the sense that you guys signed with Trustkill not too long after, and Trustkill wasn't a Christian label, or it wasn't the kind of thing that Christian metal fans went to. It wasn't the label that you would look at for that kind of music. So I remember whenever I saw that the Frailty had come out on Trustkill, I think it came out on what was that record label? I should know this. I'm blanking on it.
Or something like that. Something with initials.
No, it was
Take Hold.
Take Hold. That's right. I just pre-ordered the Zao All Else Failed from Take Hold because they have recently.
Wait, no. That was Take Hold isn't putting anything out now. I know what you're talking about, that repress, but now I can't think of who's doing that.
It was Chad. What was his record label? It wasn't
Chad.
Take
Was
Hold.
the name? Chad. That's funny because Chad did. There was a Chad who owned Take Hold.
Oh yeah.
But yeah. God, what is that? Yeah.
What was that other label?
Okay.
I should know this. Hold on. I'm
Steadfast?
Steadfast. That's it. Steadfast
go.
Records. That was that's what my copy of No Wings is, but I know that No Wings was reissued on Trustkill later on. And
wait. No. All right, now we're getting all mixed up.
We're getting into semantics. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Okay. Originally, No Wings was on Take Hold.
Take Hold, right? That's what my copy says is Take Hold Records.
Yes. And then, actually, it was Take Hold. Take Hold was the record label that we did the contract. Well, we didn't even have a contract, but Take Hold was who funded No Wings to Speak Of recording and put out the CD. And then after we signed to Trustkill bought the rights to No Wings to Speak Of, but then they licensed the 10-inch LP, vinyl to a guy named Chris who did One Day Savior Records.
Right.
And he's the guy that put it out on vinyl. But I guess is the Take Hold still on the jacket?
Take Hold is, so there's two versions that I've seen. I've got the original Take Hold Records release of No Wings. Like, I mean, it just says Take Hold Records on it and doesn't have anything else on there. But then I have seen in like used CD stores, I have seen a copy that just says Trustkill on it.
Oh, CDs. Okay, my bad. I thought you were talking about vinyl. Yes. Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm old school, so I refer to everything as a record. That's my bad. So yeah,
Gotcha.
The CD was released by Take Hold first, and then Trustkill re-released the CD in 2002 under there, because I guess they had licensed it, and I think it actually even says in the liner notes that it's was licensed from Take Hold Records.
Right.
But yeah,
And
that's
okay. Your copy should be on a like a waxy. This was the cool difference. Like the original Take Hold CD had like the booklet had like a waxy kind of matte paper that it was printed on, and then the Trustkill one was just regular glossy, I believe. Do you remember that at all?
No, I do. And like, cause my copy, I always used to tell people, yeah, this thing feels cool. You gotta listen to the record and read the lyrics along with it. And, like and I'm still very much a proponent of that, on anything that you buy, be it a CD or vinyl, but yeah, like that, No Wings to Speak Of, man, like that came out of nowhere for me. In the sense that I heard Frailty of Words, and then I found out that, because I probably heard of the band after Satellite Years had come out. And so I kind of had to do a little bit of backtracking because I had Frailty of Words, and then I picked up No Wings, and then I picked up Satellite Years, I think on the same day, actually. And, man, No Wings was just, like, I couldn't believe it. Like, because I'm going on and on about, like, the melodic and emotional aspect of Frailty of Words, but like No Wings to Speak Of had that in spades. Like, I mean, it was such a natural progression, but at the same time it was like totally out there. And that, like, because we always liken Hopesfall to space on our podcast, and that was the big thing. We always said that Frailty of Words is what you're experiencing on Earth. No Wings to Speak Of, they're starting to blast off into the atmosphere, and you see a lot of that. Yeah, you see a lot of that No Wings to Speak Of. I mean, it's an EP, but I definitely count it as a full-length record because, it passes my 20-minute test, being a hardcore fan. If it's more than 20 minutes, it's a record. And so,
all right.
So No Wings was definitely a huge record for me, and it definitely, you guys really grew on that, and I noticed that, it wasn't as in your face, religious as Frailty of Words was. And I don't know if that was necessarily intentional or not, but I mean, it definitely flowed. You can say what you want about whether or not, did they stop being a Christian band on this record, or did they stop being one on this record? And I never really looked at it in those terms. With Hopesfall, it was more of just one of those, like, this is absolutely where they were going with Frailty of Words. And I definitely heard the progression on that. And so was that something that, when you guys put out the EP, did you guys think that it was going to have, the impact that it did? I mean, for an EP, a lot of the times bands are just kind of prepping up for their full length coming after. But was No Wings something that you guys, really put a lot into as far as like touring and treating it like a full length record?
No. But if we did tour more, it was just because we were just kind of at a point at our age, and people were out of school, that we may have started touring a little bit more, but we were still just doing long weekends and then like Cornerstone and stuff like that. But that was just the EPs are fun because they're such a short burst of creativity. 4 songs and that's it. But we didn't know it was going to be, looked at years later as, one of our go-tos, that people talk about when you talk about Hopesfall, end of an era, and just the whole EP in general. But we felt good about it, and we loved the songs that we were playing. We felt that they were, definitely a step up from the Frailty of Words. The Frailty of Words, it was our first attempt at being a band and our first time being in a studio. So, it was just kind of a learning process, and we just kept going. And, it's just the next natural progression. I think we all got a little bit better at our instruments. Ryan and Josh and Doug, got better with how they wrote lyrics, using metaphors and other things that they may have picked up, just as they were growing and reading. And so it was just a culmination of just taking what we knew what we did and learning from it, from Frailty, and just taking that next step up and kind of taking it to the next level in a short burst of, 4-song creativity. And it just turned out really well, I think.
Yeah, it definitely did. I'm not trying to stroke the ego, but yeah, that record definitely, I mean, I still spin that every now and again, and I just am and blown away at the progression from Frailty of Words, which was more of a hardcore record overall. I mean, you guys had that melody, you had that emotion. It was all there on Frailty, but on No Wings, it really, for lack of a better term, really took off. And, you started realizing, what this band was going to be capable of. So when we get to Satellite, that was a little different. I remember going from Frailty and No Wings, and obviously the first thing I noticed is that the singer's not the same. And
Right.
that was and I don't want to say that whenever it came out it was off-putting for me, because I think Jay did an amazing job on Satellite, with that being a record that was kind of pivotal for the band as far as being your first, obviously Frailty was the first record, but Satellite Years was probably the first record that a lot of people heard.
Right. Yeah. It's like, it's like Jimmy Eat World, no one knows their first record. And, but then you say Clarity, and then, people know that one, even though that's their third record. Sorry, I digress. But yeah, I know what you're saying.
Something that, sorry to cut you off, Dan, something that they had kind of mentioned on their podcast when they were going through your guys' discography that I thought was a really good point too, and you kind of had just mentioned it a little bit by talking about how the songwriters kind of were coming into their own. Was the lyrical concept, or were the lyrics kind of already pre-written before Jay got in the band, or did he handle all the vocal duties, all the lyrics, everything on his own?
No, it was let me see. I'm trying to think. This was a long time ago. I believe that everybody contributed except for me. I was never good with words, as you can tell as I'm doing this podcast. But no, Doug had. We had begun writing Satellite Years with Doug, and I think Doug might have had one or two songs in the bag lyrically that Jay just went on to use and mimic. But I can't remember if Jay started writing lyrically right off the bat. He must have, but Ryan Parrish was always a big lyrical contributor, and Josh Brigham, he would write lyrics from time to time. So it was always kind of something that those three guys would bring in and be like, hey, I was reading this book and it got me thinking. And anyway, here's some lyrics I wrote. You dig them. If not, we can scrap them. But yeah, it was always just kind of a collective effort, lyrically speaking and musically.
Very cool. I think Jay did a really good job coming in after Doug, because I remember after hearing Frailty of Words and No Wings, I was kind of like Doug or bust. You know what I mean? Like as a fan, and so it was one of those. Like I don't know if I can accept this new singer. It's funny that I call him the new singer because he's been on more Hopesfall records than Doug has, but it's one of those. It's funny. Corey from Norma Jean deals with the same thing. Like he's been on more records than Joshua Skogan was on, but he still gets called the new singer all these years later, and he's a big fan of Hopesfall as well. And it's funny, because I really I loved the delivery on Satellite Years, and that the vocals were kind of turned down a little bit, like a little bit more atmospheric, like in just the way it was mixed, and obviously it all came together really well. I've already gushed about Satellite, for hours on my own podcast, but it's one of those. It's one of those things where I think that was really the big transition for Hopesfall, and that you could go from being just this hardcore band to being a band that I think the average music listener could hear and kind of get something from, and I thought that was really cool. And I guess with that being your last record for the band until obviously recently, what did that record mean to you, as far as the recording and how it was received?
Oh, that was a good one to go out on for me, just because it was just kind of the height of our relevance at that point, and being able to go into a studio where one of my favorite albums ever was recorded, which was The Egg by a band called Shiner.
Mm-hmm.
They recorded there, and also just to be able to spend a couple weeks recording with Matt Talbot from Hum was a dream come true. I mean, I remember when we started talking about what are some recording studios that y'all have on your mind that you might want to do this new record at, talking about the Satellite Years. There was a couple places, like a place in New Jersey or something. And then someone was like, what if we went to that place that Shiner did their record, and Matt Talbot from Hum owns the place? That would be incredible. And we were like, yeah, right. Like, that's going to happen. And then, back then we had managers, and, we just threw that out there, and we're like, okay, go get this for us if you can, and they called back, and they're like, he'd love to do it. And we just lost our minds. So, for that recording process, I mean, I think I just woke up every day with a smile and went to bed just smiling, just being able to hang out with one of our musical, heroes, and not only just to hang out with them, but to be working with them and to get his, just his take and his insight on, some tones or what we should do vocally on this part. And then when he actually sang on a song it was just incredible. So, I mean, that whole experience of recording the Satellite Years was a blast. And, there's a video I put on YouTube years ago where I had a bunch of footage from the studio that I kind of pieced together, and it's a pretty neat video if you ever want to check it out. But I think it's still up there. I haven't taken it down or anything. But yeah, that was just a great time all around.
Hearing Matt on Escape Pods was, it's definitely awesome, because I had been a huge Hum. I don't know if you could be a Hopesfall fan and not be a Hum fan. Like it was,
right.
You're definitely, on the same boat, as far as having that more atmospheric sound and that, for lack of a better term, that spacey, space rock kind of vibe. And that was kind of a dream come true for me too, hearing him sing on Escape Pod, because it was just it was such a culmination of everything that had come before. And, it just really, I remember thinking, like, there's no way this can't be like the biggest band in the world. And that's, maybe that's naivety talking, in the sense of like, well, if it's what I'm into, so it's gotta be what's popular, but,
right. Right.
But yeah, no, that was definitely awesome. And to follow that song up with the bending was, the bending for a lot of people like myself is kind of one of those songs that, it's a career defining song, and one of the best ending of a record I've heard. And, the bending was probably, for the longest time, I remember listening to that song on repeat, before A-Types came out, and just really just being like, I don't see how it could get better than this, And,
oh man, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. It's, and I don't say these things to suck up or to be whatever about it, but I mean, it's just honest, heartfelt feeling. And, I couldn't be more excited about what was to come as well.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people felt that way. Yeah, go ahead. Go.
Sorry. I was going to say, and kind of something I had been wondering with you guys leading up to making the Satellite Years, what was the mindset and approach to writing the material? Like, you lose your original vocalist and then you got this new guy coming in. Did you feel like this is the time to kind of experiment and kind of just see what you guys were capable of as a whole? Or was it just kind of this stuff naturally happened and became the album that it was? I always kind of wondered that with sort of the shift stylistically.
Right. No, during Satellite Years when Jay came in as the vocalist, we just kind of kept it, business as usual as far as how we approach songwriting and things like that until we got to the last song that we were recording for the record, and we were running out of time. We had like a day left, and the music was done, because that's how we always kind of wrote, music first and then vocals last. But we were kind of getting down to the end of it, and we had 9 songs done, and it was the song "Decoys Like Curves." I think that's what it's called. And that's when we kind of was like, well, maybe we could try something different. Jay, you can sing, if you have if you have a melody or something, that you hear and, you just want to go for it. Let's start trying some stuff, because we got a day left and we got one more song to finish up. And that's when, he just started singing over an entire song, pretty much. I mean, there's some screaming on that one, but
he smashed it, man.
Yeah. I mean, we were when we heard it all, mixed together and everything, we were like, I think that's probably what got us into. I think, to answer John's question, I think the experimenting obviously came next with A-Type. Because that's when we started getting the idea, after we heard Decoys Like Curves, after Jay put the vocals on them, that, man, we could do something different. Doug was never a singer. Doug was just a passion-filled, belted-out screamer. But now we've got this kind of Swiss Army knife kind of guy, and let's take a stab at maybe this singing thing. Let's kind of go this direction. I mean, it's what we were all listening to anyway. It's none of us were huge like metalheads, or none of us were tough guys by any means. So it just kind of made sense to take this new fun tool we had and kind of mess with it and play with it on A-Types, or at least during the writing process when I was still in the band. But yeah, the experimentation, I guess you could pinpoint, started with Decoys Like Curves on the Satellite Years, and then from there kind of branched out into the next 2 records.
Yeah, and I think, A-Types, I mean, admittedly at the time when it came out, I was a hardcore fan, so I don't think I latched onto A-Types, right away, and it definitely took a while. And but I remember just being very blown away. I mean, you can't look at a song like Icarus and say that, oh, that's a shit song because they don't scream the whole time. That's it takes a while, especially when people are like teenagers and they hear the Satellite Years and then they move on to something like A-Types. I can see how, a lot of people feel, betrayed or whatever. But after really getting into it, I kind of started realizing that, this is still Hopesfall. This is still, this band has always been heavy on dynamics. And so to go in that direction isn't necessarily out of the wheelhouse. And this is an adult talking, at this point, as a kid, you don't understand that kind of stuff. You just think that, oh, they went soft, so fuck them, But But what really got me on A-Types is just I after a while I found myself humming the songs and kind of get into it, because it was different than what I've been listening to before. If I want to go listen to an album that's all screaming all the time, I don't have to go that far to find that. But you exactly. do have to branch out a little bit to start being more accepting. And so Hopesfall was part of that, as far as, especially with a record like A-Types, kind of challenging me to be like, these are songs. These aren't just, we're going to play this part for, 28 seconds and then we're going to move on to this part and we're going to string it all together. And I mean, I still love that kind of music, but with something like A-Types, it was like there was a lot more, in the songwriting, this idea of let's do what works better for the song and not necessarily look at what I can do.
yeah, like defined verses and defined choruses and stuff like that, which is what we had never done anything like that before. All of our music up to that point was pretty linear, where we didn't repeat very many parts at all. It was just like a line, you know. But then when we started writing A types, yeah, we you know, that's when we kind of started diving into a little bit more of a standardy kind of, okay, there's the verse and here's a hooky kind of chorus and there's a bridge. But yeah, exactly. So, and at the same time, some of our favorite bands also had made that kind of transition, like Cave In. And did you ever listen to a band called Code 7?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of inspiring to see those guys do it. And we thought, well, and we've seen what had happened to their fan base. But it was never, we never wrote the music with that in mind. You know, we weren't going to sit there and write another, you know, hardcore record just because we were scared of losing fans. I mean, we wanted to be happy and we wanted to dig what we were playing. And if the fans wanted to come along for the ride, great. And if they didn't, well, then we're prepared for that too, you know? So yeah, I can't speak much about it because I wasn't on A types, but I wrote, I think like 8 out of the 10 songs on the album. You know, we were that deep into the writing process of that before I left.
Interesting.
So that's kind of the take on that.
Out of curiosity, something I was thinking of today in the last couple of days as I've been listening to the back catalog as a whole, in completely different kind of realms, but your career kind of reminds me similarly of Poison the Well a little bit, as far as kind of like how you started to where the band kind of eventually ended up and left. With you guys having been, you know, label mates at one point on Trustkill, was that something like you kind of ever looked over and just kind of saw what the kind of how they were progressing and kind of doing all these things, and you just kind of look at it and kind of get inspired to kind of, yeah, this thing we're doing, this path we're going down, that's maybe not the, you know, the well-beaten path. It's okay because we have label mates like this that are doing such, and we have a label behind them and that's behind us as well. So does that kind of give you more encouragement to kind of just swing for the fences on chasing whimsies, kind of?
Oh, absolutely. It's always nice to know you're not alone in doing something, you know? So if you're going to fail, then maybe you can bring this guy down with you too, or vice versa, you know? And that kind of touches on the Cave In kind of scenario too. Like, yes, I don't want to say it was affirming, but it was nice to know that there were others that kind of understood why we were doing what we were doing, and they could look at us and we could look at them and go, you know, hey, we get it. This is why we're doing this too. You know, we're going to take this chance and we're going to, you know, stay true to what we want to play. And I know that's exactly why Poison the Well kind of took the direction they did too. And that's just, I mean, at some point in any band's career, you're going to be faced with making that decision unless you, I guess I can't really say that, but it's got to at least cross your mind. I mean, you can't, most people's musical, you know, preferences grow and change at least a little bit. I mean, even Blink-182 couldn't play fart joke songs their entire career, you know.
Thank God.
But
well, I like that you mentioned. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I mean, it's just something every band as they get older, you just gotta kind of deal with, you know. Like I said, I was 17 when we started this thing, so you know, by the time you're 22 or 23, you know, shit's a little different. So you got to kind of decide to either stay on that path or get off of it and try something new. So that's what we did.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned Cave In, because that was one of the bands that kind of got me a little bit more on board with A-Types. I was like, how do you not like A-Types, but you like Antenna by Cave In?
Right.
Because obviously that record doesn't sound like Jupiter. Like it's one of those weird contradictions. I think that a lot of hardcore fans, especially, go through over time, where it's like, what do you do with your favorite hardcore band when they're not playing hardcore? And
Right.
Cave In is like absolutely the textbook example of that, and I definitely found a lot of similarities and stuff that I liked between the Antenna record and A-Types. And so at that point, once I made that realization personally, I was like, okay, well, I'm obviously on board. And because I don't think I would have been able to get on board with a record like Magnetic unless I had that kind of clarity, that I think music fans make music too complicated, in the sense that
Right.
when we hear a band that we love and they do this certain thing, there's this expectation there that this band is always going to do that one thing that I love. But, it turns out that, people are actual, this isn't just a band. It's not some faceless entity, so like this is really just a group of guys or girls, like it's just a group of people. And, what they come up with is what they come up with. And to sit there and say, well, you didn't do this thing, that I like so much, and now I hate you, like it's a weird contradiction. So I think with you leaving after Satellite and then going into A-Types and kind of seeing the success, I guess, or of that record after you were out of the band, I mean, how did that really how did that affect you as far as was there any regret there in leaving the band, or was it, obviously we don't have to get like super personal on that, but like just was there any kind of like feeling of like you knew the record was going to kind of be received the way it was, or were there any worries or concerns you had?
Yeah, honestly, yes. I mean, you don't want to quit a band and then watch them, just skyrocket into, some kind of famous money, pulling machine. But I mean, there was always that. But I mean, at the same time, I was not jealous or envious of the touring that they were going to have to do. That was a big thing also.
Grueling.
I mean, yeah, we spent so long on the road, pushing Satellite Years. And, but I knew it was going to be a good album. I mean, I know those guys, and I wrote over half the record with them, and I knew what it was going to sound like, and I knew it was going to sound great. But I was also just kind of, honestly, I mean, I just kind of had this new life with my job and with a new girlfriend that I had just, gotten, who previously I had just lost a girlfriend due to too much traveling. And it was kind of I hate to say a girl had a lot to do with it, but I mean, it kind of did. I mean, it was kind of a culmination of being sick of being on the road and just, I don't know, just the thought of, okay, we're getting ready to record this record and then we're going to have to start this tour machine back up for another year. And I've just started this new relationship with this girl that at the time I was just like, this is the best thing in the world, new relationships, young love, it was all exciting. And I remembered what happened to my last relationship because of all the touring. And it was just a time that I thought, we're changing up the sound. I don't know how it's going to be perceived. I know there's going to be a ton of touring involved. And, I just made a decision that I think I'm just going to stay here in Charlotte and go on with this new life. And, but yeah, I mean, I never I wish them the best, and I wanted them to go on and succeed. I mean, no one ever thought it was going to be they were going to be the next Smashing Pumpkins or anything like that. So, but I don't. There's certain parts of me that regret it, but certain parts of me that, it was a good time for me at the time to get out and to be able to come back to now and put out this new record. I mean, it was kind of like having my cake and eating it too. I got to get out for a while, but at the same time, I got to come back and I got to do this, so it all worked out, I guess is the long way of saying all this.
Yeah, we're glad to have you back for sure. I mean, it was definitely it's definitely one of those things where there's a certain trueness to the modern Hopesfall lineup, and I really, as a fan, could not have, what I mean? Like there was literally no hesitation on the hit the pre-order button, order the vinyl, that sort of thing. I hadn't even listened to the song yet, and I was like, no, this is fine, that's the life of a super fan. But no, I feel you on the touring and stuff, because like this is 2002. This is before. This is literally right before hardcore or music was screaming in it. There's no better term for it. That was before that could pay the bills.
Exactly.
That right. Wasn't that wasn't what the average person was looking for at that time. I mean, the hardcore fans are great, but there's not necessarily enough of them for all of you guys to pay your bills and live a life on the road that's enjoyable, And right. I think that was, yeah. I mean, I just think that I totally feel you, and I don't blame anybody with the hundreds of bands, that we've covered on our show and that sort of thing. It's one of those it's kind of a common theme that if it's pre 2004 and you're playing hardcore, it doesn't. You weren't doing it for anything other than the love of the music, and that's not
exactly,
and that's not realistic, as far as paying bills. I thought, when I was in my first band that, we were going to just tour all the time and, that we were going to be great and all this stuff. And then it was one of those like, oh, wait, I actually had the opposite experience in that we entered a market that was super oversaturated with bands like that. And, that's what John's been alluding to about, when we did our Hopesfall episode on our podcast, was that, there was a time where the market was saturated with bands that, for lack of a better term, like sounded like Hopesfall, sounded like, they did the melodic, dissonant, passionate scream thing. And I'm sure it was great for all those bands. I mean, I know I ripped it off, in my band. We were trying to sound as much like the Satellite Years as we could, and get away with, and throw some Underoath in there because that's what the girls like, and just go into that sort of stuff. And
did you have Guy Liner?
I did not, but that's that show's not about that. But yeah, it's one of those like like I could totally whenever I hear that like it was great and I love doing it, but at the same time it's not paying the bills, and you're kind of putting your life on hold, so to speak, in order to do this, and that's got to take a toll on any human being.
Right. Well, yeah, pretty much.
So we've kind of talked about everything in the band that you had been involved in and up to the band, kind of eventually fizzling out. Let's kind of talk about the reunion for a little bit. Something actually that's been very interesting in listening back to the discussion that Dan and everyone had on their podcast was, just the time that you guys were around. The internet wasn't what it is now, to where you have like all these DVDs that accompany everything. Like, you made the mention about how you posted something from on YouTube a long time ago, and just thinking about how long ago you posted that we just don't have a lot of content for Hopesfall as far as like behind the scenes stuff and so forth. So how did the reunion come to be? And something, to piggyback off of that I wanted to know was, what was the process in figuring out, was it going to be with Doug or is it going to be with Jay, or was there ever a potential that you were going to do kind of like an evening with and have both vocalists kind of trading off songs?
And you're talking about the 2011 show with Harvard?
Yeah.
Or?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, okay. Some people are calling this a reunion thing that we're doing now. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
But yeah, the that came to be because our good buddies Code 7, who I talked about earlier,
Right.
they had decided that they were going to play a couple reunion shows. And they were just about an hour and a half down the road from us in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, is where they live. And there was a club that we used to play a bunch back in the day with them called Ziggy's. And it had closed down for years, and Ziggy's was reopening at a new location. And they thought, well, you know, this would be cool if Code 7 could come back and, you know, play one of the reopening shows for this club that we love so much, you know. And then they contacted us and was like, hey, we're gonna do a reunion show. We'd love to have you guys play too. And we were just like, well, we never really thought about it. Let's talk to the guys about it. And you know, we decided, okay, yeah, we can do this. But like you said, who do we use, you know? And we were just kind of thinking, you know, well, it's Code 7, and those are the guys we played with back in the late 90s. And so let's make it an old school thing, you know. And also it dawned on somebody that the time of the show was going to be like right around the 10-year or something anniversary of the No Wings to Speak Of EP. So we're like, well, let's just kind of tie that in with it. So we kind of were like, well, let's do No Wings to Speak Of lineup, you know, which was Doug and not Jay. And then let's just play No Wings songs and Frailty of Word stuff and just make it like, since Code 7's back and we're back and we're playing shows together, it feels like 1999. Let's keep the songs that way, you know? So we kind of just kept it old school that way. And plus Jay lived in Chicago, still lives in Chicago. So it was just easier to get Doug because he still lives here in Charlotte. And so we just kind of went with that lineup and with that vibe of play the old stuff from back in the day when we used to play with Code 7. We used to play at Ziggy's, and that's just kind of how we decided on that.
When the show, I mean, I know I had friends and someone that we mutually know via social media, Austin Keene from Mind Over Matter Records. I know he and a handful of people from up here made the trip down to go see that show. So, I mean, like, you have fans coming from all over the world to come see this reunion show. When you get done playing a show like that where the intensity and the vibe in the room is just so palpable, like, does it make you immediately just kind of go like, shit, maybe there's something still here, like, let's like, do you immediately kind of start talking, like, within a day or so, like a text message goes out in the thread and you're just like, so are we doing this again, or, you know, what are we doing? Or is there a little bit of a, you know, kind of a hesitation to maybe jump back into it?
Yeah, I don't think after the show we were really like, I mean, we knew what the two shows were, and we knew that was it. You know, it was just a fun, nostalgic thing. And I don't think any of us had any plans really to carry on with that, you know. But before the show or leading up to the show, me and Josh and Dustin were already playing on a weekly basis, on and off, just writing music, which would eventually end up on this record that we're putting out. So it was kind of crazy to look back on it now, just talking with you, because when those Hopesfall reunions came up, you know, we were already writing to what we didn't even know was going to be another Hopesfall record. We were just at a point in our lives where the three of us just decided, hey, do you still have your gear? Yeah, I do. You got yours? Sure. Hey, y'all just want to drink some beers and play and just kind of write, and yeah, let's do it. Cool. You know, we have no plans with this stuff. We're just doing it to do it because we missed it, and it was good to see each other for, you know, once a week and drink some beers and play some music. And then then that's when we got approached with the whole reunion show thing. So we played we kind of put that on hold, the writing and stuff, because we had to rehearse with the other band members to do this reunion show. But, we played the 2 reunion shows. They were what they were. They were a lot of fun. And when it was over, it was over. And then we all just kind of settled back into what we were doing. And it was, it didn't really, I wouldn't say, if you're digging to see if that spurred anything, what's happening now, I would say no, not really. Because it was kind of already happening. Yeah, no.
So at what point then, like you said, you guys were just jamming on material that would eventually become what this new record is. So at what point do you all collectively sit down and just kind of realize, like, shit, I think this is a new Hopesfall record? Is there that discussion, or is it just, again, like kind of how everything has been throughout the whole career of the band? Is it just kind of something that naturally happened and it's like, yeah, I think this is the Hopesfall record. Like, I think it feels good to put that name on it and let's kind of move forward in that direction?
It kind of, we didn't really sit down and have that discussion about, is this a new Hopesfall record, until we had about 4 songs recorded or written, and that we went to a friend's house who could record us pretty well enough so we could play back and listen to what we were doing and go, that's neat, and we could give it to somebody to try vocals out on or something like that. And we ended up eventually, me and Josh went to Chicago for a Shiner reunion show, and that's when we stayed with Jay that weekend, and we had 4 of our songs recorded, and we gave them to him, and we're like, man, we don't know what this is, but this is just some stuff we've been playing. Would you be interested on doing vocal, or putting vocals on this? He was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. So, even at that point, we weren't thinking Hopesfall record. We were just, here's music that we wrote. Would you kind of finish it up for us? Would you put some vocals on it? And it was never a plan, it was never a step-by-step process to us getting to where we wanted to get. It was just, man, we love this stuff that we wrote. We want to hear it with vocals just for our own, enjoyment. And so after, he kind of demoed out those songs, that's when we were kind of thinking, well, what should we call this? And we all kind of agreed, like, let's just name it something new, and we just started tossing around band ideas, band names and stuff like that. And Josh at one point said, we should re-record these songs, just get them sounding even better. And he suggested that maybe we could get a deal with Mike Watts, the guy who did A-Types and Magnetic North, because they still kept in contact, and they just loved the guy so much and sounded like they had a really good relationship. So Josh was like, let me talk to Mike and see if we could just come up there for like a weekend, to Long Island or something in his studio, if he can carve out some time for us. And we'll just, maybe he'll hook us up and we can get a good price on recording these 4 songs, and we'll put out a little EP, under some new band name. And we were like, yeah, cool, let's do it. So Josh gave the 4-song EP or the demo to Mike Watts, and Mike was like, yeah, I'd love to record this. But do you mind if I show it to somebody or a couple people, and, maybe we can get something worked out where you don't have to spend your own money. And we're like, okay, cool. If you think anybody, is willing to pay for it or to put it out, that'd be great, And that's, that he called us back like a couple days later, and he said, Dan and Will from Equal Vision and Graphic Nature Records are interested in doing something with this. And so that's like right then and there is when it became okay, what's the plans here? we never really had plans up until that point. It was just kind of, just doing what we were doing on when we weren't working or with our families, that we could carve out a little bit of time and just play music. So as soon as, a record label came in, we kind of started taking things, a little more seriously and with a little bit more, mindfulness that this could be something cool, and it could be a really great opportunity to have another chance at doing a record, which we never thought was something that we were going to be doing again. So we just seized the opportunity and we started writing 6 more songs, and then it just kind of all came together.
So were you surprised at the reaction that you got? Because it sounds like, obviously besides the reunion, you guys were kind of out of it for some time. You were doing your own thing. Was it surprising to you what the fan reaction was based on how it had been when you had exited the band, and B, when the band ended up breaking up after Magnetic North? Was there kind of this kind of like, oh wow, I didn't know anybody cared? Was there a little bit of that whenever it kind of came to fruition?
Absolutely. I kind of thought Hopesfall was a name that had died and was gone, and that we just weren't relevant anymore. And I knew that what we were playing sounded good to me and it sounded good to the guys. So we thought that maybe there'd be some people out there that, we thought we could at least get our name or our foot in the door with the name, keeping the name Hopesfall, and that, that might go ahead and, get some of our older fans to give us a listen to. But, I was really shocked that there were still enough people out there that were still interested in what we were trying to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that couldn't have been more telling whenever you guys reissued the back catalog, on vinyl, how quickly that sold out. Because, man, by the time I found out about it, and I was a diehard Hopesfall fan, but I for whatever reason, I just missed the bus on that and didn't end up getting to pick those up. But it was crazy to me that, I had just found out about it and the reissues hadn't been live for long, and it was one of those oh, wow, they're sold out. They're gone. Not only are there that many Hopesfall fans out there clamoring for this new record, but there's also a whole bunch of vinyl collectors out there. That's got to be
right.
Total nirvana for you.
Dude, yeah, that took us all by complete surprise. I remember that day that they went up, online for sale. That day we were getting, hourly kind of up to date, numbers by the record label. We sold this many, we sold that many. And I'm like, what the hell? And then before you know it, they were like, okay, Satellite Years is gone. And I'm like, what? Cause they were there's already 1,000 copies out there in the world on vinyl, the first pressing of Satellite Years. So honestly, I thought if any of them were going to sell well, it was going to be A-Types and Magnetic North, because this is their first time on vinyl, and I already knew that Satellite Years had already had a pressing of 1,000. So anybody who wanted that, already, has it, in my opinion, so that was that was a crazy day. I think everybody, even the label, was just kind of blown away. And I think had they known that reaction would have been how it was going to be, they would have obviously pressed more. I think a lot of money was left on the table on their end.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
So I have a question, kind of speaking to the vinyl and just kind of everything, about this new record. And I'll preface by asking, it's a 2-part question, as most of my questions are. So I'll preface by starting by saying this. we've already talked about how technology wasn't what it is now back when you guys started. So the first part of the question is, coming to be a band now, getting ready to work on, an album release, a promotional cycle, all that kind of stuff. What has changed about the music industry that you've noticed, all these years later? But more kind of to the point, you're talking about how were pressing vinyl, the back catalog, you're pressing vinyl of the new record. In a day and age where so much information gets leaked between pressing factories, all this kind of stuff, like, I'm sure you follow the same blogs and stuff that tell you about like bootleg stuff and stuff that's coming out that no one's aware of and all that. How were you guys able to keep this a secret as long as you did that? Hopesfall is back. We got a new record. We're signed. The leeway time for vinyl itself is typically about 5 to 6 months. So, that's a long time to be able to keep a record or keep a secret from so many people. Like, I'm kind of surprised that it didn't get leaked at any point.
Huh. Interesting. Well, yeah. Okay. For the first part of the question, yeah. Doing the whole band thing now versus when it was pre-social media is completely different. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all that. I enjoy social media, and I've always enjoyed it just for fun, especially Instagram, just for posting pictures and stuff. But there's these crazy guidelines and formulas and, when the ideal time to post or to make a post is on, and it's just a lot more involved than it used to be coming up. We didn't have to do anything except play shows, back in the day. So yeah, so I'm still trying to figure out social media as a business platform versus the way I've been using it, which is just for fun. And I'd honestly, I'd rather just kind of wash my hands of the business aspect of it and just do the fun stuff. But, and as far as the, keeping it a secret, I'm not so sure we did a good job of that. This has been in the process since before the reunion shows in 2011, and there'd be nights where I'd be excited about, some of the practices that me and Josh and Dustin had even before Jay was in it, and I'd get drunk and I'd go on like a Hopesfall, Facebook fan page, and I'd be like, oh, something's coming, or blah, 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 or, or even before we'd, and then I'd take it down. Like I'd get bad about that there for a while. But I got excited, and I just wanted people to know that we were working on stuff again, even if it wasn't Hopesfall. It was 3 of the guys that were in the band, so, but I guess I was just talking to maybe, I feel like 100 people back then or whatever. But yeah, it is kind of crazy now that you mentioned it, because I haven't really thought about it. But yeah, I guess it was a pretty well kept secret. I guess the label just did a really good job of just kind of keeping it close to their chest on that one. But I'm glad it's out now, because I would have leaked it by now for sure. And it's like, there's still nights where I'm like a couple bourbons in, and I'm just like, I'm gonna post some of this artwork, and then I'll be like, oh no, I better not do that. I'll get a phone call, or something. But
so what we're saying is we should check your page like literally every 10 minutes just to get,
at night. Yeah.
There you go.
Or just take me out to like a bar and like start feeding me beer.
Done.
I'll just give you a record.
Perfect. No, I'm being patient with mine. I definitely pre-ordered pretty much.
I tried to get it yesterday.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. I was like, dude, if he gives it to you, that'd be great. But yeah, I don't know, man. I'm excited. I've waited so much longer now than I have to wait. Until it comes out. So I'm patient enough. But yeah, no, it's definitely exciting, and just the content. I mean, whenever I heard the new single, and I was definitely taken right back. You know what I mean? To right where I left off with the band, and it's crazy to me hearing you say that, like, we weren't even sure if this was a Hopesfall thing, and it's like, well, I mean, shit. I mean, once you brought Jay back on, I mean, who else could it be? Like, it was one of those,
Right.
Because we joked about how he was the new guy or whatever, but like, I mean, as a Hopesfall fan now in 2018, it's hard to imagine anything coming out with the band without Jay on it, and so it's, he definitely carved out his own place in the band sound over the course of the last 3 records. So it definitely, whenever I heard the Jay was in it, you were back on board, I was very much like, dude, I literally have no complaints. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how how it turns out. That's as much fanboying as I've got in me, but I just couldn't be more excited. And poor John, I'm just like, he's studying up and listening to stuff, and I'm like, did you listen to this record yet? Did you listen to this record yet? Did you hear Satellite?
Man.
Did you hear A-Type? Did you hear Magnetic? Like, hey man, you better go back and listen to No Wings. Like, it was probably really frustrating for him. But I think it's going to be really exciting to see what happens with this record.
Yeah,
and
it's exciting it's exciting to be dropping it, man. Like, believe me, I wish this thing was coming out tomorrow, or at least another song being released or something. But the response that we've gotten from the single has really calmed my nerves about how this album will hopefully be perceived, because we chose that song because it's pretty much the perfect representation of the rest of the songs on the album. So I can't imagine the people who are loving this new song not loving the rest of the record. It's not like we're not doing like a bait and switch kind of thing. It's, this isn't like a movie trailer where we're showing you all the best action scenes, and then the rest of the movie, when you get it, is just boring. We feel like we really feel like this song is just very representational of what is the other 9 tracks that are on it. So we're excited that everyone else is excited, and we think that that's only going to get better when everybody hears the rest of the songs.
Right. I mean, because then if you guys were going to do a bait and switch, you would have put the screamiest song on. You know what I mean? You would have put a song, out there that would have sounded like Satellite or sounded, you know what I mean, like something really, really safe. So I was really impressed with the single that was chosen, because I was like, yeah, this is it. This is the band that disappeared on me, in 2008, and here they are again in all the glory. And yeah, man, this new single's great. I can't wait to hear the record. And if I keep talking, I'm just gonna keep saying that over and over again. So
thanks, man. I think the most encouraging thing about reading some of the comments and hearing some of the feedback is that most often the thing that's brought up is that we've retained our sound, and that's kind of the most flattering, most important review from what I read from people that I take most to heart, because I felt like we've always kind of had a signature sound, and I've always, this whole time we've been writing this record and recording it, I've always known it to be there, but I was always kind of hoping that the fans that had been with us for, through the records would also pick up on that. And it blew me away that so many people made a point to mention that the sound is still there, that Hopesfall sound, that like, it's like we hadn't even gone anywhere, kind of thing. When you hear other, bands that are making comebacks or that haven't been around for a while and they put something out, they kind of lack something from their their earlier days that leave the fans kind of wanting something a little bit more. And it was nice to hear that we've retained that sound, and that's exciting to me. I'm glad people picked up on it. So that's encouraging.
So, something else I wanted to kind of talk about with you on and with Daniel on is our mutual love of all things vinyl and collecting. So,
Yes.
something that I don't think I know this about either of you. Are you guys completionists, or are you just, if I have one of the record and I have like the full discography, that's enough for me?
Dan, you want to take that?
Sure. For me, it's more. Yeah, I mean, I'd say that when I started collecting vinyl, I mean, like, the first thing for me was to collect all the Zayo records, and collect all the, Hopesfall records, although I haven't succeeded in that yet, but I'll get there, damn it. But it's one of those, no, I'm definitely, like, if I've got the CD, I still want the vinyl. For me, there's a certain attraction to vinyl and the artwork. I've always been a huge fan of artwork. And for me, just the concept of having that giant vinyl record there, and having that artwork, and almost even like buying 2 copies of a record so you can frame one and put it on your wall, that sort of stuff. For me, the aesthetics of it are extremely pleasing. So I've definitely, like, a lot of my vinyl collection is definitely like repeats of stuff that I already have. But there is a certain measuring stick that I use whenever I'm looking for vinyl. And the first thing is, do I have it? Number one. And number two, do I love it? Like, for me to have it on a vinyl record, because I mean, vinyl's expensive, especially if you're looking for older stuff or you're looking for rare stuff, like, I think that for me, it's just always been kind of, I have to love it. And the fact that I have it on vinyl kind of makes a statement of how I feel about that record. And so, I definitely recollect a lot of stuff. I'm not going to be satisfied with just getting the new Hopesfall record on vinyl. I'm gonna eventually end up paying that eBay price, or if the band re-releases the songs or re-releases the albums on vinyl, I'll definitely be a day one on that. I'm doing the same thing with Zayo. I just bought their All Else Failed record that came out years ago, and they're reissuing that, and so I'm really big on that. And if part of your question too was, does it have to be an original vinyl release? For me, I'm going to say no. I'm okay with it, even though I know a lot of the vinyl that comes out now is just like, it's basically just the CD, put on vinyl with all of its compression and all that stuff. But I've never been like a huge audiophile. So, I mean, I can appreciate vinyl records that were mixed for vinyl. I mean, clearly they sound better. Like, there's a noticeable difference there, but I'm not super worried about it, because for me, I think part of it is just the aesthetics of it.
Right. And I'm not really a completist when it comes to, owning every album by my favorite bands, or owning every variant. I'm not a variant collector. I don't have the money for that, but
not yet.
Yeah. I'll wait for that album to drop and then just sit back and collect it.
There you go.
Yeah, right.
Keep a couple of copies for yourself. Sell them.
Yeah. But there's so I've never felt like I needed to own a record just to make my series complete of their discography or anything like that. If there's a band I love, but an album of theirs that just didn't really do it for me, I have no problem not owning that one. I think the only album and the only band that I've ever actually like gone completely completist for, collecting all the variants and all of their albums is Shiner, because I love that band so much.
I was gonna say, I should put you in touch with Josh
Newton.
Yeah.
We've talked a couple times. I like to think that I'm the reason he ended up in Every Time I Die.
Oh, please tell that story, because that is like my favorite band.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't confirm it, but we used to tour with those guys a lot, and I'm pretty certain that I showed Shiner to those guys, especially Andy Williams, and I think Jordan ended up really liking them. But yeah, like, I mean, like dude, I'm a Shiner fanboy. Like, I would carry like a little binder of all the lyrics, like in chronological order for each record. And God, I mean, I would just like, I would annoy Keith Buckley. You know, he'd ride with us to some cities, and some of our guys would ride with them. But I'd be like, "What do you think he means in this song?" And I'd be flipping through my binder, and he'd be like, "Man, I don't." I could tell. I mean, looking back, it's just embarrassing. But like, I fanned out on Shiner, still do. But yeah, and then years go by, and they're playing in our hometown, and Josh Newton is playing bass with them. I'm like, what the hell? And I'm like, Andy. He's like, oh yeah, Josh is playing bass with us now. And I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. But yeah, so
That's
I mean,
awesome.
I don't know if I can take credit for that, but
In the day and age of the internet, until you can change it on Wikipedia, take credit for all of it.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm okay. So yeah, I'm not a completist, except if it has to do with Shiner, then yeah, I'm buying it.
Awesome.
What about you, John?
I am a completist in the sense that like I have a handful of bands that I've completed everything. Every time, actually, take it back. I don't have and the only way it came in was through the box set. The Every Time I Die, Last Night in Town. That's the only one I don't have on vinyl, but it only comes in that box set. But I have all of their records. Deftones, I have everything. I'm still waiting for them to continue the live series that they started on Record Store Day like 4 years ago. So far, we're only at Adrenaline, and that's probably my least favorite sounding record of theirs. But and then from there, I have most of the Korn records. I have everything up to Issues, and I have the newest record, but I don't really like the other records, so I just like to think that the band stopped at that point. Deftones, obviously, like I said, are a big one. And then it's just kind of like weird stuff, like the other completions things. I've almost completed my Roots discography, which is tough because they're like Pearl Jam, where they release bootlegs of some of their live stuff, which gets really awkward when you're like, oh, there's this cool one I don't have, but I also don't want to spend $60 for this European bootleg.
It's expensive.
Sure does. And then the other one that I've almost completed, I have all the Kanye's, and I have almost all the Jay-Z stuff. So I have some stuff where it's mostly completed. And most of the Foo Fighters. I think I'm missing 2 of their records at this point.
Damn, John, you're diverse.
Yeah.
Well, I mean that's kind of the fun thing too. Like I almost want to go back to Charlotte just to go to Lunchbox Records because I was able to find Refuse Fan the Flames of Discontent on vinyl for like I think it was $10. And then I picked up.
Damn.
That's where I actually picked up the Good City Bad Summer or Cruel Summer mixtape that Kanye dropped on a bootleg vinyl. Was there, and the person was just like, I don't think I've ever seen someone buy Refused and Kanye West at the same time.
You're like, hey man, it's hard to breathe in this box you're putting me in.
But I mean, that's kind of the fun thing. Like my wife and I really love going when we go travel to go to a lot of different record stores and just kind of seeing different places. Like when we went to Seattle, I think the only record store we went to was Sonic Boom, but it's just interesting to see how different people kind of curate their vinyl, what they have, the stories people like to tell. I mean, it's just, I don't know, there's something about it, and there's something about the vinyl community that at times it can definitely be pretentious. But it's one of those things where I think it's just very interesting to see how far it's come in the last handful of years. Granted, Record Store Day for me hasn't been anything worth a shit in the last probably 2 years. It seems to have gone away from what it started to be, which was, very exclusive things. I don't know how many reissues of the Led Zeppelin discography I need at this point.
All of them?
No. And so it's one of those where I feel like when I see the list now, the last couple of years, I'm like, why do we need this again? Why not give this to smaller bands? Why not give this to bands who never press something on vinyl? Like, like it already clogs up the vinyl thing as a whole for bands when they have new records coming out. So why are we wasting the time putting out shit that already exists in 2, 3, 4, 5 different pressings and variants? Like, it just seems like a waste. I don't know if anyone else feels that way about Record Store Day recently.
No, I agree totally.
And cassettes, I don't understand this trend either. I mean, at least with vinyl, they've kind of figured out how to solve the problem that they had with vinyl warping and all that stuff back in the day. But with cassettes, it still warps from playing. So other than just a weird nostalgia thing, I don't really understand the new fad or refascination with that.
Well, I don't have a new
don't get it.
fascination, but really just old albums on cassette for me.
What about you? I know you guys are releasing the album on cassette for I think your first time having something on cassette.
Yeah, like I said, it's amusing, it's a little confusing, and it's a little exciting. It's just like, I mean, if someone wants to put it on cassette, that's great, and I'd love to have a copy, but I don't know what I'll ever do with it. But it's neat that it exists.
Do you guys have to listen to like a press, like a test press of sorts for the cassette as well?
If we do, I have not. But I would have. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I definitely signed off on the vinyl test press, and
how many of those
we had to listen to.
Can I get one?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know how many exist. I think I'm the only one in the band that got one, but who knows how many they made for the label and other people.
You gonna give it to John, the guy that didn't start with Frailty Awards? No.
This podcast.
I'll be happy with the one I get in the mail.
This podcast has garnered one test press so far from people coming on the podcast. So at least I have one.
Who was it?
It was actually Nate from Finch, his new band, Private Lives. They sent me a test press because I was talking with Daryl from Glassjaw and mentioned him, and he was like, "Oh, I love Nate and Ivy and blah 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 blah." And then I mentioned that he was doing this new thing and thought it's very sort of in the same vein as like tape and color film that he had kind of been working on with Keith and his own thing. And he was like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, maybe you should reach back out and try to do a collaboration on like that thing between the two of you." And so I mentioned that to Ivy, and she was like, I told Nate, and he was like, "Oh, he's getting a test press."
Awesome. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I think that's kind of run the gamut of everything at this point. So let's plug the new album, the pre-sales, if you know the link or any of that, and socials for the band, and all those fun things.
All right, yeah. There's still some records up for pre-order. I think the latest variant that's available is limited to 250. Yeah, limited to 250. And you can get those at hopesfall.merchnow.com. Follow us on Instagram, Hopesfall, Twitter, Hopesfall, and Facebook, Hopesfall. We recently got all the handles for social media to be just our name. People kind of just offered up they were using the name Hopesfall for their own reasons, and so yeah, we recently got those. So that was a minor victory in the world of social media, and I'm rambling like a motherfucker. Let's see. What else? Yeah, Arbiter comes out. The new album comes out in July. We're playing 2 shows in New York in July. The first show is sold out, so we added another one. And from what I hear, that one is selling very quickly. And we have a show the following week in our hometown of Charlotte. And I think there's still a few tickets left for that one, and that's in July as well.
And then can we expect a full tour behind this record?
There are no plans right now for a full tour. So honestly, there are no plans right now for any of the shows other than the 3 that we have planned right now. It's not to say we're not going to do any more, but we are also, we are family men, we are career men, and it's not as easy to do the extensive touring as it was when we were younger. So I'm going to say, if you want to see us, definitely take the opportunities as they come, because the days of going out for 30 days at a time are done. So, yeah. So yeah, I think that's about
exclusivity, man.
Yeah, right.
It's like vinyl.
Less is more.
We have a rare pressing of our tour dates. We're only doing 3.
Exactly.
Nice.
Right.
And
It looks like I got the pink black variant coming. I was just looking at my my receipt, and yeah, that's awesome.
I like that one. That one turned out well.
And then lastly, I always like to end these episodes with a song. So what would you like me to play the episode out to?
Any song?
Any song, as long as I can find it on YouTube.
Oh, wow. Well, since I've been gushing about Shiner so much, let's stick with that, and let's do a song called Dirty Jazz, which is a B-side, or it was a B-side off their last album that they put out called The Egg, and it's phenomenal. So yeah, Dirty Jazz by Shiner.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us tonight. Hopefully it wasn't too bad.
Oh, dude, thank you so much, man. And I apologize. I can ramble at times.
I think you're in the boat with 2 other people who do just the same.
Yeah, you're fine. We just do it and let people hear it. You know, that's our thing.
Right.
We're like weird cuckolds.
Oh man.
Come on, I had to make a dirty joke somewhere in there.
Wow. Well, Adam, don't be a stranger, man. I might send you something on our podcast later on. It'll be a little bit different, though. I'll probably ask you to pick a band, and we'll talk about that band for an hour. It'd be fun.
Absolutely, I would love to.
So be prepared for it to be Shiner.
It's going to be Shiner,
You're
probably.
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be Shiner or Sigur Rós. So,
yeah, I'm down.
Yeah.
I'm down with both, man.
I love Sigur Rós so much. Oh my god.
Yeah, talk about vinyl collecting. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I'd
Awesome.
love to be a completist on them, but I just don't have the cash. But yeah,
I feel
know
you.
what you're saying.
I guess we'll end on this last question. What is your most prized record that you have in your collection for both of you? Doesn't have to necessarily have to have monetary value, just for you personally. Oh, Dan's hands are in his head.
Jeez. Hold on, man. Like if there was a fire, like it'd be the one record I could grab.
Yeah.
I mean, I immediately think of like maybe my test press for Satellite Years, just because that was a record I was on, and it's a test press. Those are pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
God, I don't know, man. That's a good one.
Dan?
Dan, yeah, come on.
Oh, shit, come on. Well, I've been thinking about it, and I guess I probably would go with my City of Caterpillar self-titled record is probably the one that I would rescue from the flames.
What about you, John?
It's a toss-up between... they're both test presses, but it's a toss-up between my one of 5 approved test presses of the reissue that Ross did from Enjoy the Ride, shameless plug, of the Korn first album test press, or my Harvard The Inevitable and I test press. Just because there was Lee ended up doing some really cool artwork on for the reissue, and it just kind of looks really cool. And I had him sign it too, so like the original band before Garrett ended up leaving and all that, so like it's kind of a little bit more special since it was the band that actually recorded it, not the final version of the band.
Right, yeah. Oh man, I love Lee. I love all those guys. That's wow. I didn't know you had a test press of that one. I'm very jealous of that.
Had a test press of that, and I think I still have the test press of what was the second record?
Birdcage or Songs from the Birdcage?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Man, that's an incredible record, man.
It is. Awesome.
Well, right on, man.
I'll go ahead and let you get back to your night so that way we don't keep you any longer. But thank you again for doing this, and I'm sure we'll both be in touch between when this goes out and when Dan reaches out to have you on their podcast.
Sounds good.
Very cool. Good chat.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Yep. Talk to you later.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks.
So that was my chat with Adam Morgan with Daniel Terry co-hosting with me. Daniel, what did you think of that chat?
Oh, it was a good chat, man. Adam, super awesome dude, and I like that he answered our questions, no matter how pedestrian some of my questions especially were, and no, I really appreciate that. And no, man, we definitely got some inside scoop, man. Apparently, this Hopesfall record that's coming out soon has been it's been on the burner for a while.
Yeah, I was really shocked too when he started saying that. Like, they were jamming what would eventually become the new Hopesfall record before the reunion in 2011. So, I mean, let's just do the math. Like, that's almost 7 years worth of this record being worked on, unbeknownst to anybody. And kind of like I had mentioned in the interview, I can't believe that they were able to keep it a secret between, vinyl companies leaking, who they're pressing shit for and so forth. Like, I can't believe no one knew. Like, he kind of alluded to the fact that people would be like, oh, something's coming, they're working on something. And then they kind of swerve tacticked and threw out like the reissues of the back catalog. So I think they played a very tight to the chest and it worked out for them.
Yeah, because I think it was really believable. Like he was saying that the reunion really didn't have a whole lot to do with the record, or even if they had considered it a record at that time, they were just jamming songs. But it's easy to believe when a band like this, reunites, so to speak, and plays some shows and plays old material. You kind of get this idea that like, okay, well maybe they're going to come back, because that's what a lot of bands do. They're kind of gauging where they're going to be if they're going to drop a new record or if they're going to play some shows or whatever. They're trying to gauge the fan interest. But the 6 years between 2011 and 2017, whenever they first announced this, yeah, I had basically been like, okay, well, I guess they really did just get together and do a reunion show, but that's it. We're never going to hear anything else. And so, definitely very much to my surprise, we were, like you said, John, when we did our episode on Hopesfall last year, we didn't really come into it thinking about a new record.
Right.
Like I had just found out, days before we posted that the band was a thing again. And they had reactivated on social media, and holy shit, there's these reissues coming out, and like there's a new record. And it was definitely a cool time to be a Hopesfall fan, and they've kind of kept that hype going throughout, and I couldn't be more ready, man, for when this thing drops.
It'll be interesting to see what this band does. As Adam had mentioned, there's a handful of dates, and once again, July 13th, the day the record actually comes out. It's Arbiter out July 13th, be Equal Vision Records and Graphic Nature Records. They're doing a CD release show at St. Vitus on July 13th. The second show, July 14th, is already sold out, and as you heard Adam say, the St. Vitus show on the 13th is fastly hitting that mark as well. Then a week later, July 21st, they're going to be playing in their hometown of Charlotte, North Carolina at the Neighborhood Theater, and tickets are going for that. So if you are a Hopesfall fan, as you heard, outside of these three shows, nothing is planning to happen, nothing is ready to go. I'm kind of holding out hope that since he said Jay lives in Chicago, that there will at least be one Midwest show here in Chicago, maybe.
Well, I'll see you there if that's the case. We'll have some beers.
Again, this chat was kind of long, so I'm going to kind of wrap up this intro and outro situation, just because apparently a lot of people say that I talk too much, and I don't need to talk as much as I do in these things. So,
they haven't heard me yet.
So we're going to kind of wrap it out. Dan, where can everyone find you in the discography discussion online?
So on Discography Discussion, you can find everything about us at www.discussmetal.com. or www.heavymetalpodcast.com. We talk about metal and hardcore and all that good shit. And we have a fun time, drunk time doing it. We just recently had an episode on the band As Lay Dying with John on, and it was a good time.
I set the record for longest podcast with you guys. It was Rogan-esque.
All good.
If you would like to follow Adam and or Hopesfall, you can follow them on Facebook at Hopesfall Official, Instagram at Hopesfall, Twitter at Hopesfall. Adam, I'm not going to give his personal thing out, but if you are a sleuth of the internet, you can figure out a way to find him. Instagram, you can find him at Purge, B as in the letter, 4 as in the number, U as in the letter, binge. That's Purge before you binge. And I think his Twitter that I just found is under Madam Organ, which is basically just a weird, funny way of spelling his name to make a clever handle. But again, yeah, Arbiter is out July 13th via Equal Vision and Graphic Nature Records. Try to catch them on this trio of shows. You don't know when they're going to be playing around anymore. And we always end these episodes out with a song. As you heard Adam pick, he wanted me to end it to Shiner's Dirty Jazz. So we're going to end it with Dirty Jazz. That sounds like a weird sexual act.
That's all right. We'll get down to it.
Fair enough. Thank you again, Dan, for coming on, and I will talk to you guys next week.